welcome Adrian Holovaty.
Hey, thanks guys. Did anyone recognize that? Okay. For the 95% of you who evidently didn't, that was the MacGyver theme song, as arranged for acoustic guitar by me, like you do. Andy asked me to tell my story from the perspective of internet and music stuff. And I thought that would be an appropriate song to start with because that's where my internet music story really started. It happened back in 2007 when I was kind of bumming around at home. I had just gotten my dad a MacGyver Season 1 DVD for Christmas. And I had MacGyver on the brain or something, so I decided to learn it on guitar and post it, like you do. I'm not a full-time musician, I'm a web developer, and I was working as a journalist at the Washington Post at the time, so just to give you some context. So yeah, I kind of decided what the heck, add something to the internet that's of some dubious value, and I posted this MacGyver theme song. I didn't think anything of it, and in fact I posted it to my blog, which was devoted to like tech stuff and journalism stuff, and everyone's like, why are you doing this? I think I lost like 50% of my readership, and I did that. Didn't think anything of it. I posted one other video, it was the Inspector Gadget theme song, so it's really awesome. But I didn't really think of anything about it until like 5 months later, I get a text message from my brother-in-law. And he just says, "You're on YouTube." And I'm like, yeah, you got the memo like 5 months later? Yeah, I have a few videos on there. And then he didn't respond. So I'm like, okay, what was that all about? Then I checked my email, and I have like hundreds of emails from YouTube, which was emailing me whenever I got a new comment on a video. And I think I had at the time like 5 comments total across 2 videos. But like all of a sudden, boom, hundreds of comments. And it turns out what happened was YouTube had selected my MacGyver video for its homepage. Now this is back in 2007 when they had some editorial process that decided what went up there. And I have no idea, I still don't to this day, why they decided that video was interesting enough to put on the homepage, but there it was indeed, the lead video on YouTube. So I was sort of thrust into this YouTube chaos. Now, you may wonder what happens when your video of an 80s television show theme song on guitar is on the YouTube homepage. Well, I have a very scientific pie chart that splits up what kind of comments you get. About 10% are positive, about 20% are just like, you suck, like literally, like just, you suck, you're gay, you know, just stupid trash. 20% is self-promotional, So people are taking advantage of the eyeballs of all the people looking at the video and saying, like, hey, check out my channel, please, please. The next 20% was MacGyver humor. Started, very coincidentally, by Andy Baio, who at the time posted a comment saying, it was like the 5th comment, because he was one of the original people who saw it, and he said, like, MacGyver could make a guitar out of a toenail clippers and a rubber band or something like that. So that extended into hundreds of comments of all the different permutations of how MacGyver could create a guitar. And then the last 30% is tabs, please. Now I'll get into this in a second. So like I said, I only had 2 videos at the time, and the other one was the Inspector Gadget theme. And part of that, the haters in the comments were like, oh man, you must suck at guitar. The only 2 things you know how to play are the MacGyver theme and the Inspector Gadget theme. And I'm like, you're kind of right. But really, seriously, that really got me like kind of pumped up and like, I gotta show these internet haters who's boss. Like I can play some legit stuff. So I started posting some other stuff. I posted, like, the next one I did was All the Things You Are, which is crazy, like, complicated jazz standard. I thought, okay, that'll put him to bed. And then I started getting all these comments like, what the hell is this? Like, I signed up to your channel so I can get 80s comic or 80s fun. So then I followed it up with DuckTales theme, Curb Your Enthusiasm, the We Play theme song. It's actually a really awesome melody, right? Dun, 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 dun. So but then all the people who saw my jazz stuff were like, what are you doing? Like, you really suck. Like, it was that same stuff from the first go around. So I like just sort of like was climbing this mountain of like, okay, appease all the 80s video game theme people, and then appease the musical snobs, and then like boom, 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 boom. So I eventually, you know, just sort of built up some semblance of an audience by appeasing both of them. You guys know this song? Never My Love by The Association. So there were a couple of things that propelled me to post more and more. So like I said, I'm a web developer. I had no intention of being a professional musician or doing anything on YouTube other than some throwaway stuff that I do for a joke. But a couple of events really like pushed me over the edge to do it more and more. So one of the earliest ones was after I posted a cover of this song, Never My Love. Just to give you some context, this is the #2 most played song of the 20th century, behind You've Lost That Love and Feeling, and #3 is Yesterday by the Beatles. So I was like, big song. And I posted this fingerstyle version. It's the same style that I just played for you. And I didn't think anything of it, but a couple weeks later, I get this email from one of the songwriters who wrote the song. So it was a 2-brother team, and one of them has passed away, and the other guy emailed me and said, hey, I was checking out YouTube, I found your version of Never Met My Love. My brother would have loved it. Can you please send me an MP3? And I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like, totally like buzzed for 2 days just thinking about, wow, I did this throwaway YouTube recording, and the guy who wrote it, one of the 2 guys who wrote it, one of the best songs of the 20th century, like emailed me and he wants it on a CD player, and he followed this up with, hey, thanks so much, I'm listening to it in my car all the time. Like, what? Wow, so that's like got me jazzed. Yeah, I'm gonna post more videos because, man, I just need to get this like high from doing cool stuff. So then I get this email from Pilou, who's a magician in France. And he's like, yeah, on December 31st, I'll perform on a very famous TV program, I'll show you my friends, Le Plus Grand Cabaret de Monty. So at the time I was sort of getting more and more of these, like, can I use your music in my independent, film for film class? And I'm always like, sure, do whatever. So this guy, I didn't think much of it. I was like, sure, use some of my musics. And the only thing I said, which I usually say, is like, please send me a video of whatever it is you do with my stuff. So then a couple weeks later, he sends me the video of what he did, and here is a little clip.
Mais bien sûr, c'est un Français. Regardez bien l'agilité de ce garçon. Il s'appelle Pilou. Cadeau.
So it's this magician's routine. But the interesting thing about this is that it was seen by 6 million people live in France. This was on December 31st, 2010, and it was the like their equivalent of Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve, as far as I understand it now. So like this guy randomly took my videos and is performing them in front of millions of people on French TV, which is very, very strange. Then a second, even stranger thing sort of came out of this, which was, well, two things. Number one, he didn't even ask me for the sound files, so he must have used like some crappy YouTube to MP3 downloader, and the fidelity of the recording is just awful, so like, that got me upset. The second thing was his song selection was kind of weird. So this first one was the song All of Me, which is a jazz standard, sort of makes sense, it's French sort of sounding. But then later in his act, he used the second one of my videos, and let's see if you can even like detect what song this is. So you wanna know what that is? Yes, the theme song to America's Funniest Home Videos. So a guy in France, for the New Year's Eve, like Dick Clark show, uses my America's Funniest Home Videos theme song to do a magic act to. Like it's probably my greatest accomplishment. Like if this goes on my tombstone, like somehow connived the French into putting the America's Funniest Home Videos theme song during a magic show on December 31st, I'm happy, man. So that just, you know, these crazy things are happening, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta post more of this stuff. It's like a drug, like I gotta just get more zany things coming from my YouTube videos. So over time, I got some YouTube SEO. So some of the stuff most of the stuff that I do is fingerstyle, which is the stuff that I was playing for you. The other half is gypsy jazz, is this more like up-tempo stuff. It's the music of Django Reinhardt. If you don't know him, he was a jazz guitarist from the 30s who was named after a web framework. So I eventually, over time, accumulated some SEO for gypsy jazz. And in fact, I was the #1 video on YouTube for gypsy jazz, which I'm really embarrassed by because I was playing really poorly back then. It's like 6 years old. But then, like, I started to get all these emails like, please can you teach me gypsy jazz? I started going to gypsy jazz events around the world, and they're like, oh, hey, you are the guy from YouTube, and this crazy stuff. And that turned into some, what I think is a really interesting phenomenon that, that people should take more advantage of, which is internet to real life arbitrage. So here are 4 videos that I recorded with world-class, amazing gypsy jazz guitar players. This guy, Stefan Rembel on the left, did the soundtrack to the movie Midnight in Paris a couple years ago. Joshua Stefan is just this amazing German, crazy player who's played all around the world. These other 2 guys, equally awesome. This third guy is actually my favorite guitar player in the world. These guys would never have me on a gig. I'm just some schmuck in Chicago. But because I had a YouTube following, they were like, oh yeah, this could be an interesting way of getting more fans, because they're really, really big in IRL, but they really don't have an internet presence, so to speak. So there's an interesting arbitrage opportunity. I mean, I can help them reach a bigger audience, and they can help give me some credibility as a gypsy jazz player. I think the scales are out of balance there, but you know, you see what I'm saying. So I encourage you to find opportunities to do some internet to real life arbitrage. But the most shaping, the most interesting experience I've had so far from my YouTube videos has been this one. I got an email a couple of years ago from a guy called Jordan, and he said, hey, my fiance and I recently fell in love with your videos. Will you please play at our wedding? And they're downstate in Illinois in a little town called Mattoon, 3 hours south of Chicago. So I was like, mulling this over. It's May 3rd. That's my own wedding anniversary. I was talking over with my wife, and we finally decided, oh, that would be kind of a cool way to celebrate our own anniversary. So we were like, yeah, sure, Jordan. I'll drive down there and play at your wedding. And up until the very last moment, I'm like, is someone pranking me? Like, Mattoon? Like, where does it even come from? Like, Mattoon. So I, with trepidation, drove down to Mattoon and got to the church. And what do you know? It was legit. So I did play the wedding, and it was like listed on the program, like Adrian Holovaty from the internet. I'm not making that up. Yeah, people in the audience were like, that guy's from the internet. It's just like weird, like why, whenever the internet and the real world collide, it can only be described as a collision. So I played that, and they were super cool. They invited me like in their limo with them to like hang out. I didn't do that. I went back to Chicago, but it was awesome. This is an amazing experience. As part of that, I had to learn the "Here Comes the Bride" thing, right? Da, 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 da. So after I learned it, I'm like, okay, this is just some other thing I can post on YouTube. Always looking for new stuff. So I post the "Here Comes the Bride" video. And after a couple, maybe weeks or months, it becomes high up in YouTube SEO for "Here Comes the Bride." And a lot of people search for this. So I started getting all these emails like, hey, I found your bridal chorus. I really want to walk down the aisle to it. Can you somehow send me an MP3? Got a handful of these, so I'm like, okay, yeah, just use some YouTube downloader. It'd be fine. Like, don't pay me anything. Just take it. I get more and more and more, and I'm finally like, it's not that hard. Just like look at your HTTP traffic, grab the video, run FFmpeg on the file to get the audio extracted. Come on. But this was not this was not acceptable to these brides to be. So I put up a little thing on my website saying, hey, here I'm an independent musician in Chicago. You can buy my "Here Comes the Bride" song. Actually, it's quite an array of "Here Comes the Bride." You get like 4 different versions, all the different permutations with the intro, without the intro, different bit rates and stuff. It's awesome. It's the best damn "Here Comes the Bride" e-commerce site in the world. So you can pay $10 to get it, and that seems like a lot for a song. But compared to what these brides and grooms are paying for their wedding, it's like a drop in the bucket, right? So I get like one of these a day, and it's been going 4 years strong. So this turns into like thousands of dollars per year just on this one song. And that really got me thinking, like, wow, do I really, should I be pursuing this farther? And then I start getting the sort of a related genre of email, which is, hey, I've been asked to play this song at my brother's wedding. Can you please show me how to play it? And the first couple, I'm just like, oh, look at the video. I deliberately crop my face out and put it on the fingers so that you can figure out how to play it. And they did not go for that. So everyone wants these tabs, they're called. It's instructions to guitar players on how to play the song. So finally I got fed up with all these emails and just tabbed the thing out and put it on another page on my site and said, hey, pay me $10 and I'll give you the tab to "Here Comes the Bride." So I get like a couple of these a week, and that's been like 3 or 4 years. So that really starts to add up to some decent money, you know? So that got me thinking, well, so many YouTube guitarists, I don't know how many of you follow guitarists on YouTube. It's this whole like subculture of amazing musicians all around the world doing their thing. And most of the comments, depending on the musician, but a majority of the comments are, show me the tabs. 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 It's just like tabs, no punctuation. Tabs. Tabs. And that bringing it back to MacGyver, that was the last 30%, which is tabs, please. Just tabs. It's so rude. So here's you probably can't even read this, but it's a little cross-section of just tabs. We want the tablature. Sounds awesome. Do you have it tabbed out? I'd like the tab for it. You are an inspiration to me. The public wants tabs. So this, if you're a guitar player, you sort of, on YouTube, you sort of probably know this, and I really feel for you. So let me give you a quick, for those of you who aren't guitarists, a quick explanation of what tabs is. So this is standard notation, sheet music. It tells you how to play some music. The equivalent of that in tab is this really ugly thing where each horizontal line is a guitar string, and the numbers are placed on the appropriate string, and the numbers represent where to put your finger. So it's basically like poor man's like how to play a song. It's just like put your finger here, then put your finger there. It's very not musical, it's very tactical information. But this is how the majority of amateur guitar players learn how to play songs. The problem is that the difference between these is stark. The first one gives you a lot more information than the second one. The first one tells you how long to hold notes and all this tempo and rhythmic information. The second one tells you where to put your fingers, but it doesn't actually show you how long to hold the note. So it's ambiguous whether this should be da-da-da-da or da-da, da-da, or da-da-da. It's the same notes, but the timing, is completely different. So this is a huge problem, and people have been putting up with this for like more than a decade on the internet, probably 2 decades. So I wanted to fix that. So I made Soundslice with a friend. This is what it does. This is that same MacGyver thing. And what it does is it syncs the tab with a video so that you get that rhythmic information. Another problem that I forgot to mention is that guitar players do not want to learn how to read standard notation. Like, they're just lazy, incompetent people. Myself included, I cannot read standard notation. So with the assumption that you're not going to teach people standard notation and that they're going to use tab, let's at least make the lousy tab a little bit better. So the philosophy behind this site, Soundslice, is you still use tab, but because you're listening to the song at the same time, you have that context on how long the notes should be held and the timing and the rhythm and all that stuff. Does it make sense? Okay. So I made this with a friend, PJ Macklin, who did the design. He's an awesome designer. And that was the main impetus for it. It was I'm getting these tab requests, or I want to tab out something myself, and I come back to it a week later and I don't even understand it, so I need to listen to the original recording again. It's completely wasteful. There's another thing that I experienced that influenced the design of Soundslice, and that is this guy. Hopefully it... This is my favorite guitar player who's living. He's a guy called Adrian, who I like not just because of his name, and he's in France. He's an amazing, amazing musician. He was one of the guys who I successfully arbitraged. So he was hanging out with me one day, so I got to get a sense of how he spends his day. And the answer is, he spends it on his computer, just like you or me, in front of YouTube. And what he does is he just finds some cool jazz guitar videos and just plays them, and maybe seeks them forward to find some interesting bits. And then when he finds a little riff or something that he wants to learn, he's like, oh, I like that. And then moves the playhead back a little bit and does this like really horrible looping technique where he just like plays it and then he moves that tiny YouTube playhead. It's horrible. And I'm sitting there watching like, wow, my favorite living guitar player, and you're doing that? Like, horrible. So I added this looping stuff to Soundslice, so you can, with very fine-grained precision, loop a section. So this is like time, right? You can extend it or make it blah, blah, and you can hit half speed to slow it down without changing the pitch. So you're all obligated to learn the MacGyver theme song by next XOXO. Who's gonna do it? Yeah, okay. That's what I like to see. Did anyone get a photo of those people so we can fact check next year? Okay. So the site really stems from my YouTube experience with getting all those tab requests and also seeing how my guitar idol uses YouTube in such a bad way. So we launched the site in November of last year. I started populating it with like the most requested songs from my own YouTube channel. So you can go there and type in my name and find the tab to all these YouTube videos synced up with the video. So if you're like, the tab doesn't make sense, you can actually hear it, which makes a lot, it's like a feedback loop of learning. And then I attended XOXO last year as nicely memorialized in this New York Times photo. Who knew? So there I am with Sandy and Martin. So I was here at XOXO and got so inspired to help independent artists and try to make a living for myself that I decided, well, I'm going to make something of this Soundslice thing. I'm going to have a go at it. And while I'm doing that, I'd like to somehow help other indie artists. So there's a problem with that, though, in the tab world. So those of you who are guitar players, this is like old hat to you, but for those of you who aren't, if you want to learn a Led Zeppelin song, you have two options. You can go to your music store on the left and find the sheet music book and pay like 15 to 30 bucks for it or whatever. Or you can just Google it and you get these super shady Russian sites where you see the tab. And it's horrible, this ASCII stuff, it's like so hard to understand, but it's free. And it's very, very hard to compete with free, of course. So I'm thinking about like, how can we turn Soundslice into a business if the assumption is that no one's going to pay for tab because it's all available on these Russian sites. I had an inkling for a little while, oh, maybe if the UI is so much better than the text ASCII stuff, maybe people will pay. But did some tests and talked to some other companies in the space who like folded because it was so hard. And I just decided, it's probably not a good idea. But then I realized there's actually a Venn diagram. There's, if you think about musicians as like the world here, look for the intersection of musicians who have musician fans, so they have fans who want to learn their stuff on guitar, but who aren't widely pirated, so that kind of translates to they're probably indie musicians, so you're not going to find their stuff on the shady Russian sites because they're not so big where someone's going to take the time of tabbing it out and pirating it. And it turns out that there are quite a few musicians in that nice little middle section of the Venn diagram. So I started thinking about that, and we came up with this addition to Soundslice that lets indie musicians sell their stuff. It's very new, it's been out for like 2 months, but it's called Pitch Perfect, where what we do is we find indie artists who are in that Venn diagram. At the moment, it's mostly gypsy jazz guitarists. It's like perfect for us because like 95% of gypsy jazz fans are guitarists themselves. It's all like, it's like a guitar-gasm, like going to a gig. Like everyone's like, how can I play this? So, but it's really nice because it's such a niche thing that like you can't find it online, and Guitar Center, the guitar store, is not going to waste their shelf space on this. So it makes a lot of sense. So we've launched with a couple. Gonzalo Bergara is a really awesome gypsy jazz guitarist. We also have Jim Guthrie, who played last night and is super awesome. And if you don't know, this album takes time. It is so, so good. I highly recommend it. This is what you get when you pay if you buy. So you get like the same interface, and it's really an interactive experience where you can loop and slow down and all that stuff. So we're hoping that that will be compelling enough that people will buy that and yeah, get it done. So we give 70% to the artists. Max talked about values this morning. I think that's one of our big values is we want to improve the lifestyle of indie artists. We want that to be a reasonable way of life, is to make a living as a musician. And yeah, so that's that. And finally, I want to leave you with a thought. So this is one of my favorite photos. in case you can't really tell, it's a gate, and people are very obviously going around it. A very nice metaphor for going around the gatekeeper. So I not only think that there's a values reason for helping independent artists, which is, you feel good about helping independent artists. I also think there's a really good business case, and I haven't heard a lot of thinking or discussion about this. Frankly, it's this, when you deal with indie artists, you cut out a lot of the BS. So I was talking with a very well-known band's manager, trying to get them to be on Soundslice, and they're like, they immediately went into all the legacy music industry stuff, like, oh, well, how will we track all the plays? And I said, well, if you play 1 second of a song like 50 times because you want to learn it, because you're looping it, how does that count as a play? Is that like 0.2 plays? It's like 0.2 times 50 plays? What is that? And it's just like silence on the other end. Or what if you slow down a song? Does that count as like 1.5 times the song? It's really weird. The legacy industry hasn't caught up to this, so it sort of becomes this bottleneck that you don't have to deal with if you're dealing with indie artists who are just like, oh yeah, I would love people to learn my songs, so hey, here's the songs, I'll help you learn how to play them. There you go. So not only is there a value reason, there's that business reason for helping indie artists, and I think that's really cool. So that's it. Thanks, guys.